The big announcement over last week was that Wizards of the Coast made the acquisition of D&D Beyond. That's basically it was run by Fandom. We're going to talk about that. They not only acquired it, but they paid $146.3 million for the platform in cash. It's a cash acquisition, which is crazy to think about. We're going to talk about that, how it's going to affect the future of D&D. We're also going to talk about what we'd like to see implemented, maybe for some new features, maybe some new implementations. We might also talk a little bit about what maybe Fandom might do with this cash infusion that they've just acquired. All that and more. It's episode 143 of the Chaotic, or 141, excuse me, of the Chaotic Good Cast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Chaotic Good Cast, our weekly geeky roundtable. I'm your host, Doug Shute, and with me are my fellow casters, Ben Higgins from Quarterstaff Games.
If we made $1 million per episode, we still wouldn't have as much money as Fandom. Just
right?
Let that sink in.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Good for them, though. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about it here in a little bit. Artist illustrator of a story comic, the one and only Amanda Call.
I do not. In fact, do story comics.
Oh, sorry.
Not
Age of
Barney.
Night. Sorry, Barney's not
He's
here.
not here.
Sorry, I'm used to having Barney
so
on.
glad that was. Oh my
Sorry.
god! Somebody clip that. That's gotta.
Usually, you stop yourself.
I do usually stop myself.
You didn't even try this time.
I was doing a couple
Scroll
different
right
things.
through.
Yeah, I was doing a couple of things in the background, and I wasn't realizing what I was saying. It even says I even read Age of Night on the
Age of
screen
Night.
as I was saying it, and I still said story comic.
That's what happens when Barney's on for like
I know.
120 episodes and then disappears.
Upsets
I know,
the
right?
natural order. Yeah.
I tell you. The artist, illustrator, author of Age of Night, the one and only Amanda Call.
That's me.
That's right. And of course, our resident geek of the North, the one and only Jason Hunt.
Wizards of the Coast really needs to get better available backgrounds because I usually have a topical background every time. I literally searched for 15 whole minutes for a proper background from Wizards of the Coast and couldn't find a single decent one to use.
Oh,
So,
all right.
bleh.
That's
Well,
unfortunate.
before we begin on tonight's topic, I want to thank everyone for joining us live. If you're joining us live, thank you so much. If you're listening to the audio podcast, you can join us live every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube, Twitch. Just search for Victory Condition Gaming and follow us wherever you'd like to there. We greatly appreciate it.
Just on the internet though, not anywhere else.
Oh no, you can follow me. I'm going to be at PAX East next week, later this week. So if you want to follow me there, you can.
Okay, when people show up at your front door, Doug,
Yeah, that's true.
you'll regret that.
I greatly appreciate everybody that is part of our viewing audience and listening. And if you're watching this, hit that like button down below, and we greatly appreciate that. It helps grow our show. And I think tonight's topic is actually pretty good. It's interesting to see how D&D has grown, and it's kind of, I guess, this move didn't really surprise me all that much. It actually took me a little. I'm surprised we didn't hear it sooner, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. We're going to dive into this. We'll try to be about 40 minutes tonight, and talk a little bit about this subject.
You were serious? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not a challenge for you.
Challenge.
Jason. If anybody would like to bring up topics for this discussion, we'd glad to incorporate that into this session. We greatly appreciate all of the comments and everything that are given while we're live. All right, $146.3 million.
That's a lot of
exchanged
dollars.
hands between Wizards of the Coast and Fandom. For those of you that are viewing this that aren't familiar with D&D Beyond, which I'm pretty sure the majority of folks are, D&D Beyond is the online way to play D&D. It's put out by actually run by and developed by Fandom, who does the wiki Fandom wikis and stuff online, and they developed this platform to play D&D, and it was licensed through Wizards of the Coast, and evidently
they were paying royalties to that for a while.
It's really, really interesting that they settled on $146.3 million for this platform, which I know the thumbnail says, did Wizards of the Coast pay that money for the future of D&D? And we'll get onto that. Yes, Amanda.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that Fandom did not initially develop D&D Beyond.
They did not.
Curse is actually the ones who initially developed it, and then Fandom took it over and they developed it further from there.
Gotcha.
Curse Gaming picked it up first.
And I've made it quite well known that I'm a big fan of what Fandom is doing in the tabletop business right now. Just like where I thought Free League was 5 years ago, that they have a lot of room to grow over the next 5 years. And I think that Fandom is one of those companies that is up and coming, that I'm really, really digging what they're doing. And if they can make a couple really big steps here in the next couple of years, I think they're going to be a major competitor in this market. And I'm excited for them for this move as well. So I think both parties involved there's some smart decisions going on here. Guys, was this any kind of shock to either of you three that D&D acquired D&D Beyond? Ben,
was shocked.
You were shocked?
I had no idea that D&D Beyond wasn't an actual Wizards product. So when I saw the headline, I'm like, why is Hasbro paying Wizards of the Coast money? They own Wizards of the Coast. What's going on here? And then I'm like, oh.
You didn't realize that it was just licensed from.
I was in the exact same boat, Ben. I did not realize.
I didn't know. See, I was under the assumption that everybody because I have known for a while that it wasn't a Wizards, it wasn't something that they built, that they just licensed it out.
So I've never touched D&D Beyond. I've never even looked at it.
Wow.
Part of that is because I get no benefit from it as a store. We get nothing, literally nothing out of it. And in fact, it's kind of a competitor to what we try to do. So, shame on me for not knowing that, I guess. But also, I have a bookshelf behind me,
right?
I have everything.
See, okay, there's a couple of reasons why I think this was a smart move by Wizards of the Coast, and let's get into that right now. I'm surprised. I know everybody was there's a large percentage of folks that didn't realize that this was a Wizards actual produced property or product.
It's not
right. It was not. Product, right. So I think that it was smart of them to bring it in-house, just because it's become a rather large part of the brand now. Mm-hmm. And I read an article the other day that during the peak pandemic, D&D Beyond accounted for over 50% of all D&D sales. And when you think about that, that's crazy to think about, because that is indicative that might not stay where that will be at that level for the next few years, because everybody will be going back to playing in person. But that shows you that in the future it could go way back up there and probably exceed there. I mean, we're already seeing it with Magic the Gathering, where people are playing online on their Magic Arena. So the future is in online play and having having some sort of digital platform to play D&D. And I know all of us here are like, well, we've got books on our shelves and everything, but I'm going to tell you right now, we're not the future of. It's going to be shocking to everybody. We're not the future of D&D. We're not the future of this industry. We're not. We're the present of this industry. And I'll tell you what, I see this all the time in the high school. This younger generation, and I'm going to sound like an old man now, this younger generation values digital property. They value digital like things, like books. Like they'd rather have a PDF than an actual physical book. Like it's crazy to me that's
PDFs are easier to cart around.
Exactly.
You don't have the 90-pound DM bag.
They view like having a digital asset.
I'm here, thump.
They view having a digital asset the way we view having books, and so it's not surprising.
Back problems and all.
Right. It's not surprising to me that Wizards of the Coast is realizing this and going, oh, you know what? In another 20 years, what space are we going to need to be in? We're going to need to make sure that we're in this digital, we're going to make sure that we have the majority of our digital content. I think that was super smart just because, we know that D&D just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And do they really want to be forking over 50, 60, 70% of their sales to another company even 5 years down the road? They don't.
No.
They don't. They'd rather just give them, here you go. Here's your money.
They got them for as cheap as they did.
It's cheap. I mean, 146.3 million is a lot of money, Jason. That's a lot of money.
Looking towards the future of where it's going to go,
that's like 3 years of D&D sales, though.
But here,
if you can recover that within 5, you're already making a very good investment.
So definitely. This is definitely something that they'll make their money back in a few years. But here's the thing that I love for Fandom. Fandom already has the structure in place, and they've already put the steps. They've already put their platform online because you can play Cortex, you can play Tales of Zadia or whatever. All these different Cortex games, which I love, I think is great. If you haven't seen these digital books on their websites that you can buy, they're just amazing. They're one of the top. Like if you're familiar with D&D Beyond, you're going to be able to get through these Cortex books just like you would if you were in D&D Beyond. It's a great mobile implementation. Like they've already established their part in the industry. Plus, the other thing is that Wizards of the Coast doesn't want to give their competition money every quarter or every year as well to help them build up their brand. They'd rather just go, here's some money, go spend it. And I'm excited to see what Fandom does with this money because there's gonna do some. I seriously think that they're going to take that money and just keep building out and make their platform even better, so that it will compete with. Will ever be as big as D&D? Now. Yeah, will it be as big as D&D? Probably not, but it will be one of the major competitors in the industry.
Not a chance. Will it ever be as close to as big as D&D? Not a chance.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they do. Yeah. I don't know. What else was I going to say about this? I forget.
I don't know. You were kind of starting to froth at the mouth a bit.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I am.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast, Doug has not stopped gesturing since he started talking.
Well, so now that Wizards owns D&D Beyond, I'm not all that familiar with D&D Beyond. I've played with it a few times just to kind of get the gist of it, just kind of see how it all works. What would we like to see? What would we like to see Wizards implement with their product to make it even better? What, Jason? You've played with D&D Beyond a little bit more than I think any of the rest of us. What would you like to see for improvements? What would you like to see as like a feature that they could add? Because I can think of one right off the top of my head that Fandom already does with their platform.
The first thing that they need to do is start giving people an ability to buy a physical book and enter a code and get the dang PDF. There is literally no reason to not do that any longer.
And you know what? I know why Ben's laughing because they're not going to do that.
WotC will never do that.
No, they'll never do that.
They want you to buy the book
It's something they should do.
Right.
Yeah, well,
because they have no problem selling it now. They have no problem selling it twice.
That's the issue. Well, I buy occasional physical books now because honestly, the digital implementation is more useful to me because that's where all my gaming is right now. But that is the only reason. If I was sitting at a table with people, D&D Beyond is almost zero value to me. I would almost never use it. I'm not going to manage my character on an iPad when I can have sheets in front of me on a table. So they need to incentivize people to pick up the digital stuff for when, like, once everything's done with lockdowns and restrictions and people are back comfortable playing at home again. I know a lot of people will stick with online because they've developed long distance games. But when people go back to playing in actual tables, people are going to want to buy the physical books again. So they need to balance that out.
So Vanderbeest has a great comment here on our Twitch channel. It says, I think we'll see more and more groups playing in person with laptops and tablets with a connection to D&D Beyond, and I think that is very, very true. I think you're seeing.
What the problem is with that?
What's that?
The dice rolling on D&D Beyond is garbage.
See,
rolling those dice on your screen is garbage.
I've tried
no
it.
One wants to do it.
But the math rocks. We want the clickety clackety.
I want to clickety clackety. Not some of us. Not this young generation.
Clickety clackety. I'm pretty sure that the younger generation is still buying a crap.
They are buying
fancy dice.
Math rocks. Yeah.
I'm telling you that, like, if they can get it all,
they may very well like to have stuff on digitally and everything else, but that does not apply to math rocks. Does not apply to math rocks.
See, I've tried. I've used my iPad many times just because I have a regular game that I play. Well, not so regular right now because we got bumped a couple of times. But when I play my regular bi-weekly game of D&D, I tried once using my iPad as the interface for everything, as we play on Foundry. So I can, and there's lots of cool extensions for Foundry, so I can extend my D&D Beyond straight to the virtual table there. The rolling is slower. The searching is abysmally bad. The character modifications, touching your screen and all that to modify things, is better on a cell phone than it is. Branding, by the way.
No.
It's better on the cell phone than it is on the tablet, or like on any kind of a tablet. It is hot garbage on a tablet.
No. It's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that they don't like the dice rolling on
digital dice rolling is not
random dice number generators and all that.
The only
thing I like about it. Or, go ahead, Amanda.
The only digital dice roller I have ever enjoyed was the Tabletop Simulator one, because they actually it was like a physics-based 3D die where you threw it at the table and it actually like bounces around and then lands on a number. It's not a random number generator, it's a polygon and it bounces around, and obviously it's still dictated by like programming and everything, but you can actually like change where you throw it and how fast you throw it, so you feel like you have some interaction with
a little bit of control.
Even if not control, you feel like you have influence, whereas when you just click a button that says roll, you do not feel like you have any influence because you don't at all.
And the digital dice on D&D Beyond, as cool as they are, because I'm a subscriber. I mean, I've bought into D&D Beyond. I'm a subscriber, so I get the digital dice when they come out for subscriber perks and stuff like that. The only thing the digital dice are is kind of neat looking occasionally. A lot of the times they're garbage. Like, no, I should stop saying garbage. They just don't look good. Like they came out with one that was supposed to be potion bottles. So all of the dice look like these gobbly, weird, silly little potion bottles. And they came out with a set recently for, I think it was for Halloween, called the Sanguine Dice Set, which was all blood based. And when you rolled them on the table, instead of going clack, 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 they went like squish, splorch, blotch, bloop, like as if they were soggy and covered in toilet paper or something. Delicious. That I thought was kind of funny for a few minutes, but after that, I was just like, I never want to see these dice again.
No, I don't like that.
So Jason's suggestion about getting a digital, when you buy a physical book, you get the digital product as well. That's something that I really think that I mean, tabletop.
They should, but they've proven that they don't need to. That's the problem.
Fandom tabletop does that. Right. They're not going to do that because they'll go away from that because they've already got two. They can sell both products hand in hand anyway.
Yeah.
Guess which other company that wants you to spend way too much money already does that?
Yeah.
Guess which other company that literally exists to just eat all your money and does that?
And gives you free PDFs.
I I covered the code because apparently my husband hasn't used it yet, so he doesn't want anyone to snipe.
Okay, if you could just peel that back
PDF.
a little bit while I screenshot. I don't have that codex yet.
It's it's pretty remarkable that Games Workshop, who literally only exists to churn out content in order to get more money out of you. Like their games barely function, but they're
not even shy about it.
They're not even shy about it. Hey, we're releasing this army again, and there's new models for perfectly good existing units because you want to buy them again, and they're willing to give you a free PDF. Although currently it only works on their app, which is terrible. Oh
yeah, I know it is kind of horrifyingly bad. Like D&D Beyond is the gold standard when it comes to implementation of these apps.
Yeah,
it really is. And honestly, when I use it on my desktop, if I need to search for something, it's 2 seconds and I've got it on my screen. Like there's lots of cool functionality there, but it's just in an actual tabletop setting, I would never bring my iPad to the table for that. I would use it for maybe a searchable reference tool, but I would never use it for character management, for dice rolling, as a replacement for any of that stuff.
Patty says, I think Doug is overestimating Fandom/Cortex. How much of the Cortex online tools are built on Beyond? How many staff stay on Fandom or go to Wizards of the Coast? Are the Cortex online tools public now? That's some great questions. I don't know. I know that so I backed the Cortex RPG, and because of the fact that I backed the Cortex RPG a few years ago, that automatically gave me the online rulebook for their website. And when you buy a book on their website, whenever you buy a physical book or you buy the rulebook digitally, it just the rulebook is the D&D or the Cortex Online or whatever it is. I don't know what they call it. Whatever platform they call it. I think they've made a couple different websites for Cortex, and then one for Tales of Xadia, and I'm assuming that they're going to be doing them for all the various RPG books that they put out. So far, they've been it's pretty much the same template as what D&D Beyond uses. Of course, it doesn't have as much content, but it highlights words, and you just click on that words, it brings you right to it. As dice roller, it has all those things. Like, I don't think that anything from those websites are built into D&D Beyond. I think that's just the template that they use for their various platforms.
It depends on what their deal involves too. Like,
I'd actually be really curious about some of the particulars of, and that's probably why the acquisition hasn't actually gone completely through yet, and they're probably hashing a lot of this kind of stuff out.
Right.
And I think, and I would be curious. I'm primarily curious about like the staff situation. Like, are these people still going to be employed by Fandom? Are they going to be employed by WotC? Are they going to just like let these people go? Are they going to hire new people in? Like, does Fandom all exist in one office and now it's going to be real awkward? Like, I'm really curious about how that's going to work behind the scenes.
Funny.
I would love to hear how that all plays out.
I would wager that the sale is for the software, and they may hire one developer or two developers into the Wizards umbrella. They've previously, when they've grabbed IPs, they do not take staff with them.
But
they don't want the previous vision. They want their vision.
And that totally makes sense to me. But the thing with something like this, that's the thing with a very well-functioning website is that you have a team of people who know what the hell they're doing, constantly making sure that it is functioning.
That's true.
And so if those people don't make the transition, then we may have some rough days ahead on D&D Beyond.
To shed a little light
up saying, so we broke something.
To shed a little light on Hasbro and WotC Digital, there are bugs on the Magic Online client that have been going on for 3 years now and are not fixed.
No.
Okay. Interesting.
These are game impacting, rules impacting bugs that have not been fixed.
That's
I am worried that the experience people have had with D&D Beyond pre-Hasbro is not going to be the experience that they will have post Hasbro. And I think that is a very real concern that users of the platform should have and should be pretty vocal with WotC about.
So I think the one thing that this kind of maybe settles a little bit more is the fact that, remember, like a few months ago, there was like this call to like separate Wizards of the Coast as its own like entity. Wasn't there like some sort of demand that like they got the board together and they wanted to get everybody into the same, like they're like, hey, let's break off. We're the most we're the most profitable part of this company. We should make our own entity.
Yeah, a small group of shareholders wanted to spin Wizards of the Coast off from the overall Hasbro umbrella, essentially make it two separate businesses, which would still be owned by the people who own Hasbro, but it would be a separate business. It was weird. Like
then.
Yeah, like they didn't want it to sell, but they didn't want it to be a subsidiary of.
You don't want somebody from Hasbro's executive board wandering in the room and saying, that looks stupid, get it out of here, when it's got nothing to do with anything they don't know anything about.
Yeah, and that was turned down ultimately a couple weeks ago by the Hasbro board.
So I think this might be some of the I don't. It's hard to say how this decision like influences.
I honestly don't think they were related at all.
No, well, I think it was kind of just to bring it all into in-house, be like, hey, you know what? We realize that a lot of our profitability going forward is e-commerce, and what's really been,
and that's been stated by Wizards during the earnings call earlier this year. They feel that they will be growing their online, their digital only presence. And in fact, last year, the rebranding of Wizards of the Coast to be more just Wizards is partly so that they can brand it as a digital and gaming imprint, and hopefully move it forward out of its traditional pen and paper tabletop stack of cards that it's been previously.
Does anybody on this, I forgot to ask this one to start out, does anybody on this panel think that this was a bad move by Wizards?
No.
I don't
it's a good move for Wizards.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad move for some aspects of gaming.
Yeah.
So,
we'll see how it shakes out. I'm not necessarily optimistic. I'm not necessarily pessimistic either. I'm just kind of like, we'll see how this goes.
The one negative thing that I have to say about this is the timing. It's too bad that it took COVID and the pandemic for Wizards to realize the value in D&D Beyond. Like, if they had made this,
really highlighted the value. That's the thing.
I know, but they should have realized it to begin with. Like, if they had tried to acquire this D&D Beyond 2019. I don't think they'd be dishing out 146.3 million.
Well, no, I mean, we also have to look at the fact that Fandom only got it at the very end of 2018.
Right.
Like it's been only developed by Fandom for less than 4 years at this point. So like I don't think that the timeline is necessarily off. I'm not even sure the COVID pandemic necessarily sped up their timeline of purchasing this. I think this is it was inevitable that a highly successful digital implementation of their physical products would eventually be purchased. I don't necessarily think the pandemic had anything to do with speeding up or pushing it forward.
Over 50% of your sales are
it
just
definitely
online. You have to kind of go, oh, wait a minute.
Sure.
We need to address this.
Maybe we should own the digial reseller.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that made them sit up and probably maybe up their timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
But even going back 2 years with like the State of D&D announcements that they made, they've been committed to releasing these digital products through D&D Beyond, even when they weren't. At least I would have to assume they weren't planning on buying D&D Beyond at that point. So
2 years ago, honestly, D&D Beyond was half as good as it is now.
Yeah,
it's seen a lot of improvements in the last 2 years. So like Ben's right. 2 years ago, it wasn't an issue.
I think if anything, Fandom deserves a lot of credit for staying on top of it and improving it and constantly getting it to the point where D&D said, "Okay, we have to buy this now."
Absolutely.
And I don't like I said, I don't think that's necessarily due to the pandemic, but props to Fandom for making sure that they were constantly improving a product that they could have just sat on. D&D is popular enough that they could have gotten it to a functional point and said, "It's good.
We're not going to invest anymore."
Yeah.
Patty says they made a D&D online tools 2 times in the past. D&D Insider and Gleemax both failed.
Yeah. Insider was basically just Digital Dragon magazine. They had lots of lofty goals, but that's all that ever really came of it. And Gleemax was just a...
It reminds me of like Betamax. Like this just sounds like from honestly, a different era.
A terrible name for a terrible product.
And the funny thing is, I think it was actually picked because it was a magic in-joke in one of their unsets. So it didn't. It's like it wasn't even really tied to D&D, but only tangentially.
Yeah. That's what happens when you leave a group of nerds in a room and tell them to come up with a name for something.
I could be wrong in that, but I know it was a magic card. So
I don't know, if, Doug, if you can pull up Jason Bratley's comment from a little bit back where he said, "I think Wizards have a plan and we don't know it fully yet."
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And for sure. There's stuff that they almost certainly have that they want to do with this. It would be silly for them to have purchased it without having some kind of plan, without integrating it into their plan going forward. The thing that I think is interesting about this timing wise, and the thing that as someone who works with a lot of small RPG publishers who have taken great advantage of the OGL, one of the things that we've all been speculating for a while is like, okay, well, 5th edition has been very popular and has done very well and has been an OGL product, but that's what happened with 3.5, and then 4th edition was not.
What was that again? 4th what now? I don't remember.
Yeah, and so there's kind of been a little bit of speculation of like, are we going to go back to another edition that is not OGL? And is this a part of that strategy of wanting to have greater control over their property for the next edition?
Well, that was one of the topics that I have written down for this session was how does this impact?
It'd be like the Star Trek movies where there's like a good one, a bad one, a good one, a bad one, a good one, a bad one.
How does this in fact impact the brand going forward? Because they know that this. And I think someone even mentioned it in the chat that the D&D Beyond is not going to support 5.5 or whatever this new edition of 5e is going to be going forward, which is kind of an interesting choice. And it will be interesting to see because Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they do a release for a book, doesn't the D&D Beyond product also release kind of at the same time? Or is it fairly soon? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see.
Sometimes it's a little bit later depending on implementation.
During the pandemic, a couple of books released months before the physical because they had it all done, and it was just the logistics of moving pounds of paper around.
Exactly. Yeah, it was easier to just push go and
stuck
then
on a
ship.
shipping container somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that's going to impact everything because now you've got 2 people in or you have 2 groups probably in house that you're going to have to get on the same page, whereas I'm sure previously you were just like, okay, here's Fandom, here's all the information, you just all program it, this is the date that we want to. Well, I don't know, I mean sure it's probably
when they're creating these books, they're all done digitally first, they're not a physical thing first. So it's so easy to just say, okay, we have a template now, we have a formula now, they have all all of the importability there. So we just send them the PDF or whatever we've worked on. They hit a button, import it all, make sure all the art's right, make sure that everything's situated correctly, and then it's just published now. So it's a formulaic thing for them at this point.
Yeah, I'll be interesting to see if they can keep the same schedule, if that gets impacted at all.
My concern is the third-party people. That's what worries me.
What about third-party people?
There are so many people that have Patreons and other crowdfunding systems set up that use D&D Beyond, because D&D Beyond, because it's all OGL, they allow people to draw information out of D&D Beyond into their virtual tabletop systems. So if this is a precursor to them picking a system, a tabletop, what's going to happen if they then say, hey, we've decided to go with Roll20. So all you Foundry guys like myself are just SOL and have to go figure out a new way to do things, because a lot of the functionality that I get and a lot of the fun for me with virtual tabletops like Foundry is I support a few Patreons. I have access to all of my content from all of my books. I just hit import. It brings it all over. I can drop a token of a monster right with the artwork from the monster manual already on it, right onto my tabletop. It brings up the stat block and the monster stuff. I hit roll. People do damage. I hit apply damage. It's all automated.
So here's my question: is this just the first step of them creating their own virtual tabletop platform?
I don't think they're going to create their own. I think they're going to pick up one of the existing ones. If they try to create their own, that's a lot of legwork behind the scenes. And then you've got to deal with servers and stuff like that. Like, that's the reason why I personally picked Foundry, is because I own the data tool now. I'm not licensing it from anybody. If Foundry goes bankrupt tomorrow, I still have all of that information that I can put on a server that I can have people log into, and we can just continue playing.
Gotcha. Patty says, sorry, the 5.5 comment was me, but I was being hypothetical. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we don't know, but that's just the thing, is we don't know what they're going to do with the next edition or half edition or whatever else you want to call it. We don't know. And I do think that it has, because we've seen this before, we've seen this happen before, is that it is concerning for people who use the OGL functionality of D&D or attach their livelihoods to it, that that might be going away with the next edition, because that is a thing that has happened before.
I would be very surprised, reading the industry, that Wizards would get rid of OGL with a 6th edition of the game. For as little impact as it actually affects Wizards, it definitely keeps people talking about Wizards and D&D more than if they were to just say no. I mean,
it helps drive people to them.
We've seen when it doesn't share editions and when OGL doesn't exist, people's interest in D&D goes down. It definitely does, because people are producing so much roleplay content that if they can't use the most popular system, they'll use another system, and that system's popularity goes up. And you see a little bit of depression with D&D. Is it enough to kill a game? Probably never again. As much hate as 4th edition gets, it was a fine system. It definitely was marketed poorly.
That face.
But and we can go into a whole tangent on 4th edition. I actually didn't mind it, but I think it was marketed poorly. It was marketed as the MMO when it wasn't an MMO. It was a roleplay system, and they should have continued to lean into that.
So my thing is, Ben, that I agree with you that I think it would be a bad move, and I think it wouldn't actually make sense from an RPG community and marketing standpoint. But I also think that trying to get a room full of board members and shareholders who maybe don't understand things about the actual tabletop gaming industry and community, and only see, well, these dollars are going to other publishers and they should only go to us. That's where you run into some trouble.
Totally understand. Yeah.
Sometimes these decisions are made by people who don't understand the community and don't really care either. Like they just
very much so. Yeah.
They're making the Hasbro dollars and they don't care why or how. They're going to follow their traditional business path of like, no, all the dollars should come to us. No one else gets the dollars.
Well, and that's exactly why they bought D&D Beyond, because of the fact that, you know,
that's lends credence to my concern.
I do think that it was smart for them to pick this up. I think it's definitely the future of the game. You know, 20 years from now, that's the majority of players are going to be playing with a digital rule set. They're going to be playing online somehow. That's my prediction. I don't think that's. I think all the data suggests, all the trends suggest that that's the way it's going to go. So it makes sense. Yes, pay them 146.3 million, and then that way you're solidifying it. As long as you put it. I have a hard time thinking they're going to pay that much money and then just kind of just like screw it up. But you never know.
One thing I think you might actually see with D&D Beyond being owned by Hasbro now is you'll actually see the digital offerings of these books decrease in price, because right now you're basically paying the same as the physical copy.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that I think was due to the fact of licensing. You had to pay the licensing stuff. Now that it's all in-house, and especially if they want to get people to double dip in both physical and paper, and believe me, they would love to sell a book twice to someone. In fact, they'd love to sell a book 3 times, what with the hobby game store alternate covers, the regular versions, and then the digital. Right. If they reduce those PDF copies to $25, then they will get people that will buy a digital version and a physical version. People will easily.
So here's my prediction on what I would do if I were Wizards of the Coast. I would, and I know that they've already done this before with some of their products. I would make as many different entry-level products as possible. Whether it's the starter set, we've already seen a starter set, we've seen an essential set, we've seen what else? There's the
Stranger Things starter set.
Things, like
there's the new starter set that's going to be releasing later on.
All of those products the people just buy to get. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to start. You give that to people for free in D&D Beyond, and you hook them in that way. And that's just going to keep people buying it in both the physical and the digital from then on forward. And it might not get everybody, but you're going to get a lot of folks. And I know they've already done that with some of their entry-level products, but I would do that I would find 3 or 4 different entry-level products and just throw free D&D Beyond content in it. And there you go. It's all about customer acquisition when you have a digital format. I'm just saying. That's just the business side of my brain.
I feel like we've been transported to a sales meeting.
I'm just saying.
All about customer acquisition.
When you pay $156.3 million, you better believe they're looking at customer acquisition.
I feel like I need to buy a timeshare from Doug now.
Yeah, seriously.
He's given us the sales meeting.
But
yeah, this is turning into a pyramid scheme.
I don't want to sell your essential oils, Doug.
But counter to that, Doug, I don't think customer acquisition is a problem for them. They did how much? It was 50% of all D&D sales was D&D Beyond.
Exactly.
Like that's not a customer acquisition problem.
But here's the thing, Ben. I would love to know how many were new customers. I would love to know how much of those sales were just like people that just open accounts and just bought the core Helm book and like the few products that you probably need to start up and running. I think that if you want to grow that platform even bigger than what you've already got, that's the way you do it. I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job, and I'm not saying that they're not doing they're not already acquiring users. They are, because they paid $146.3 million. I've said it I don't know how many times. But how do you make that $146.3 million worth it?
There will be a quiz at the end for the exact dollar amount.
Exactly. You acquire more and more users for that platform in order to make it worth your money, and that's the way you're going to do it. It's because it's no matter what, Ben, to bring people onto your platform, it costs that company money, whether it's advertising somewhere. So they're already buying your product in an entry-level product. So you give them a free code and let them get it for the digital product. Let them try it out, and then you just keep pulling them in further and further in. Anyway.
It literally makes me physically a little bit ill when you call it an entry-level product. Oh my God. Reducing my favorite game of all, my favorite hobby of all time to entry-level product is just, I want to punch you right now.
So I'm talking about like a starter.
That's how I feel when someone calls me a content creator. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Whatever.
No.
So entry-level product is like a starter set. It's something small to get you started to, I'm not saying that like...
Sounds like drugs. Making it sound like drugs, Doug. Here, take this little tiny thing. Exactly, Ben.
But that's what they should do. And Wizards, feel free to use that if you want to use that.
They've done their marketing's probably already done that.
They've done the first hit is free in Magic quite a lot. Yeah, quite extensively.
They're gonna do that again. Yeah. So here's my question.
If they do nothing but release their existing content for the next full year on D&D Beyond, they will more than make back their entire purchase amount.
Oh yeah.
And they'll be dead even, if not higher already.
Yeah,
so there's no chance that this is a mistake for them. It's no chance it's a bad move. It's strictly going to make them money.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So my question is, we'll get a few more minutes and we'll wrap it up. Now that Fandom has $146.3 million in cash money, dollar bills, what do they do with it? I think no, they don't run. I think what they do, and maybe I think they go after a few more big IPs, and they invest in their platform. Oh, of course, they'll probably keep some of. What's that?
You mean you think Fandom is going to go after some IPs?
Oh, yes.
That's what Doug's saying.
With their money. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's what they do with some of that $146 million. I'd love to see them get...
I think they're going to blow a lot of it on Cortex stuff that they don't need to. But yeah, I could see them trying to...
I think they'll build out their platform a little bit more. I think they'll make it a little more robust.
I think they're going to get caught up in pumping money into Cortex that probably won't be a great return on investment in the long run. But I could see them doing it.
Like Patty's comment, squander it.
No, I don't think they'll squander it. They're making some pretty good decisions.
I just love the scandalized tone of that comment. Squander it.
They will a little bit. I guarantee you. When you give somebody $146 million in cash, they're going to go buy at least one foolish thing.
Certainly.
Well, it's a company.
Anybody would. It doesn't matter. They're going to share it out to the people who are the core of the company. They're all going to get huge bonuses. They're all going to go home. Everyone's going to buy something silly when they've got money.
Everybody's got a personal jet that they're taking to conventions.
Not something like that. But yeah, they'll buy everybody's always got their eye on that one thing that they would buy if they had like $12,000 of silly money. You take a trip to Egypt for a month or whatever. Who knows? They're going to do that with some of it. They will.
Possibly. What it does for me is it reinforces the fact that Fandom Tabletop is a company to keep an eye on for the next few years. Just because they've been building...
They need to watch, though? They need to watch the guys at Curse Gaming.
No. So what they did, Jason, was they build up D&D Beyond. So they've got the reputation. They built up Cortex.
They already have the reputation.
Tales of Zadia. They've got they now have the Masters of the Universe role-playing game. Like, they've got the cred now. They've got the the dollars behind them as well. So watch out.
$146 million isn't as much as you think it is. I don't think.
$146.3 million just in cash. Like no stock option.
Why does it matter if it's in cash? It could be in peanuts. Who cares?
You know why it matters that it's in cash is because they're gonna send a huge chunk of that to the IRS. That's why it matters that it's in cash. Here you go.
I'm telling you right now, Fandom Tabletop, watch out for them. I'm excited to see what they do. I'm you all know that I'm not a huge 5e player, so this move isn't all that exciting for me. Other than the fact that the dollars and cents of it, like the business side of me goes, oh yeah, this was a super smart move by Wizards. They probably should have done it a few years ago, just because now they probably could have saved themselves a few million. But holy smoke, Fandom Tabletop, let's see what you can bring to the table, because I'm excited for you.
You know what worries me about the whole thing now that they have Cortex? They're releasing all these IPs. Like Master of the Universe, G.I. Joe, and I think Transformers is eventually going to be Cortex as well.
Transformers is Renegade.
Yeah,
okay, sorry. But anyway, they've got all these Saturday morning cartoon things that only people like medium age and upwards care about 2/3 of their content right now. Like Master of the Universe, I'm sorry, Doug, as much as you love the thing, isn't going to go far.
It's definitely
It's
like
not.
there's a certain demographic for it, but that's what I'm saying. They're going to be able to go out.
No one in my gaming community, other than you, knows even what Tales of Xadia is.
I don't. Yeah, to be honest with you,
I know what Tales of Xadia is because I have young children.
Okay, and Amanda.
Because I have young children, and it's a show that's aimed for younger children that it's based off of. So that's actually good, because that's your future demographic, your younger kids that are getting into it. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you that I bought the Tales of Xadia book online because you get the free digital tool set, because that's exactly what they do. That's why I love Fandom, because you get both of you get the digital and the physical. I bought I pre-ordered the book just so that I could see the online implementation of this rule book on the website, just because it is so good, because it's very much like D&D, but I wanted to see what it was like. And I had no experience with Dragon Prince or any of that, but because I got to kind of read through and see how they presented it online, it made me interested in it, because I think, oh yeah, that would be a pretty cool world to role play in. It's not something I'd go to every day, but yeah, it would be pretty neat. Yeah, and if they can do that with a really substantial IP,
that'll be the thing. If they can get a genuinely substantial IP, I don't even know what it might be at this point, honestly.
I don't know, but
they need that. They need the killer app thing.
I think, and hopefully Fandom's listening, if they can credit me for this with a small little bit of that $146.3 million. Genshin Impact. Get that IP.
I don't know what that is.
Has no idea.
Do it.
I know.
His face. He's like, what now?
It is like the most popular free-to-play online role-play Japanese role-play game out there. Turn that into a tabletop with digital online implementation. I think you can go big far with that.
Ben's right. So much has been overdone with the traditional, I guess, air quotes, role-playing styles, like the typical fantasy world with the typical fantasy classes. With a few twists, they change the names of the religions, or the whatever they call spellcasting is, like frubles instead of spells or whatever. But it's still basically the same mechanics all the time. And one thing that a lot of the overseas games, even like Free League and whatnot, it's a different mindset from different countries, and people in North America tend to gobble that stuff up like hardcore when you present it in a package they can get a hold of. So that might be their best choice, honestly. Pick up an up and coming title from Lord only knows where, and run with that.
Absolutely. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Wizards of the Coast does with D&D Beyond. I'm excited to see what Fandom does with their implementation of their digital tool sets and everything. If you're excited about either of those, let us know in the comments. If you would like to see any kind of implementation or changes to either the D&D Beyond or any of the Fandom websites that they have put out for their tabletop games, let us know. Yeah, I'm really excited. This acquisition made a big splash, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk about it.
How much did they pay, Doug?
146.3 million.
It's a lot of dollars.
I love it. I love it. Good
Cash.
Good deal.
That's
cash.
That's like 200 million Canadian dollars.
He just forked over 146.3 million dollars in just dollar bills. It's ridiculous.
Well,
better not just be dollar bills. That'd be very cumbersome.
That's right. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you like this episode, please hit that like button down below. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. We really greatly appreciate it. You can join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we also do other actual plays and stuff. We've got an actual play coming up in a week from Wednesday where we do another session of The One Ring. Yeah, next week.
We get to be hobbitses again.
And if anybody is going to PAX East this weekend, make sure to stop by. I would love to see you at the Fridley booth, and glad to chat.
Oh, and I won't be at PAX East because I'll be at Bangor Comic and Toy Con this weekend. So if you're in the Bangor area, come see me. It's at the mall.
Wow. All right.
So you need to pick which of the hosts you love more.
Well, it's kind of like...
Whoever's
stranded in northern Maine, you may as well go to the Bangor Mall.
There you go. There you go.
If you can get to Boston, then by all means go to PAX East.
All right, folks. That is our 141st episode of the Chaotic Goodcast. It was chaotic, but it was so good. We'll see you all next week. Bye now. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you would be so kind, make sure you hit that like, comment, and subscribe, all the YouTube jazz that we're supposed to do here. It really is greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to support us more, you can check us out on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/Victory Condition Gaming. We have all sorts of Patreon perks, and it definitely helps support our show. Thank you so much.